Welcome to the business edition of PM Express. It has thrown many economies out of gear. The mighty have even fallen. We're talking about the coronavirus or the COVID-19. But you know, in Ghana here, we're talking about a planned shutdown or a partial lockdown. How are businesses in the country managing? And how do you strategize to actually weather the storm in these times? This is the business edition of PM Express, and I'm actually grateful to have one of the fine gentlemen in the business industry who will be joining me for a discussion. Also, some will be doing on Skype and on the line. We'll take a break, and we will be right back. This is the business edition of PM Express. Welcome back to the business edition of PM Express. So, as I said earlier on, this thing called COVID-19 or coronavirus has thrown many economies out of gear. The mighty have fallen. But here in Ghana, the president last week declared there's a partial lockdown or restricted movement. But how are local businesses strategizing or managing the situation? And how do they ensure that they stay alive? Has it presented another opportunity for you to survive as a business, or you raise your hands up in the air and say that, listen, it's all bad for me? Well, this evening on the PM Business Edition of PM Express, I'm with Humphrey Dake. He is the managing director of one of the lovely firms in the country, actually, and vice president of AG in charge of SMEs. He said, thank you so much for your time for joining us this evening on the Business Edition of PM Express.
Thank you.
And I'll also be joined later by the chief executive of the Ghana Employees Association. They've told us that, well, they have to maybe embark on some staff rationalization. Is that a situation or something else has to be done? And also, Kofi Dad's Ranka solution in terms of what do you do in these times to ensure that you stay in business? You've had restaurants that are actually doing deliveries now. You had firms that are coming to you to bring your staff to you. Is that the way to go in the midst of this lockdown? There are some who are saying that if things doesn't stabilize right now, they might be actually forced to get things worse for us. Humphrey Dake, as I said earlier on, he's the vice president of AG SME and also the managing director of Red Moon Resources, actually. He's joining me here. Sir, thank you so much for your time, and you're welcome to the business edition of PM Express.
Thank you.
How are businesses doing? I mean, you're on the ground. We only just read the reports and the fine numbers that they tell us, but how are things right now?
Well, thank you, George. Right now, as stated, there's a bit of a distortion in the market. There's a lot of anxiety, a lot of unexplained activities, and the dynamics are very fluid each day as you follow the news and as you watch events unfolding. So there's real distortion with a lot of anxiety. Nonetheless, in the midst of this, one could still believe that there's an opportunity beyond the horizon. Currently, the impact of the COVID-19 cuts across all sectors, all economies, and you could see that the impact on a number of sectors and enterprises, some may be severe, some may be moderate, and some may be mild. And in the midst of the same, one will also identify opportunities. And you could see that essential products and essential commodities, one of the essential and opportunities that promoters of businesses could cash into. Once that is being, once that unfolds, then one looks into the existing businesses, the structures. Granted that you have a mild hit, what is the immediate strategy to deploy to still keep yourself above waters and survive the turbulence? One may say immediately one will identify, scan. You need to still go back to the SWOT analysis and scan your environment and identify cost-cutting measures.
You are in the energy, haulage, and mining business. Can I say that is the Red Moon Resources? You are kind of immune a little bit, because the president even said that road construction can still go on, mining business can still go on. It means it looks like these are sectors that, whether shut down or no shutdown or partial shutdown, we still need them.
It still comes back to the strategy and the model of individual businesses and the sectors that you are in playing. Because in each sector, there's a value chain. And one needs to identify, and I'm also in the packaging line business. And in the packaging, it's tied to the food-related industry in the value chain. And I could tell you within the period of COVID-19, a month back, we had a surge in demand of our products because in the set chain, the end users needed to stock because of the uncertainties. So you see a surge in demand. However, when you flip to an industry like the hotel industry and the airline industry, you realize there's real turbulence. That is the severely hit industry. So in the whole frame and in the whole scope, you need to segment it and see each sector and the impact of the COVID-19 on the sector.
I'll be coming back to Mr. Yimdake to get from you what are your members saying. And SMEs, some are saying that you are also vice president in charge of SMEs.
That's right.
They are the biggest casualties in all these challenges. But
That's
also, I want to bring in Mr. Ranka Solution, Kofi Dadze, in terms of how should we strategize in all these problems? Because I still see some pubs operating just delivery. I mean, for this week, I've been taking my food to delivery.
That's right.
And it tells you that in the midst of all these challenges, there are still opportunities.
Absolutely.
Ranka Solution, Mr. Kofi Dadze, is joining us via Skype and also going to offer us some strategies in staying alive in all these challenges. Mr. Kofi Dadze, if you are there, let me first get your thoughts on what is happening. I mean, did we all expect things to get this bad? Mr. Dadze, it looks like we're having problems with the line and we'll get back.
Hi, can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Great.
Okay, great.
So I'm just trying to find out from you first that, I mean, did you expect things to get this bad? Because when it started, we all thought that, oh, it was a China thing.
Well, yeah, I think for any of us, whether as individuals or as working business people, it's been a bit of a shock change where literally overnight, leaving us very little time to prepare, to learn, and to adjust. The world around us has changed. And also, there is no telling how long what we may perceive as an interruption persists, or whether everything will just return to what it was before, like perhaps at the end of a rainy season where the world dries up again. So there's a certain amount of uncertainty that we have to respond to. And the context, one of the ways in which this kind of environment is described in business terms is volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. There's a lot of ambiguity and uncertainty in the operating environment right now.
Find out from you. I mean, apart from your IT expertise, you offer some strategy advice as well. In these times, what should I be doing to stay alive? Because the hoteliers are up in arms. You know, is there an opportunity for that Ghanaian firm to rejig its operations to stay in business?
Absolutely. And here is what I would suggest in 4 simple steps. The first is to adapt. Anytime there is a significant change in your operating environment, you need to respond to it. But obviously, to respond to it, you need to be able to sense and understand what the nature of the change is. Once you've understood that, in your adaptation process, your next major step is to innovate. So when there are major market shifts, you need to respond by developing insights into the causes as well as the impact of the change on the environment. So you literally want to say, what is it that has caused the change? And what kind of behavior, what kind of response are the businesses I interact with, the people I interact with, the partners I deal with, what context of change are they in, so that your innovation is a response that is able to meet the opportunity created by the change in the environment. One very important point, which is the third, is to build in resilience. Resilience. You see, even the best ideas, that is when you innovate, even the best ideas can take a while to gain traction in the market. So you will need to survive for the length of time that it takes for you to go through the adaptation. So basically that it takes for you to fine-tune your adjustments in your operation, how you're engaging with customers, with partners, with other businesses until you regain your market position. Now, if you really innovate, this then becomes an opportunity for you to do more than simply regain the market position you had, but to actually maybe win a stronger market position than you had before because of your ability to gather insights about what the nature of the change is and to respond with innovation. Now, the fourth key thing in the process is to learn. See, when you try out new innovations in engaging your customers and in winning the market, you will get feedback. Even no response is feedback. A negative or undesired outcome is feedback. So the trick is to actively watch and take in that feedback, learn from it, keep adapting until you do win. Now, I'd like to add that for many of us, we're having to take a leap in how we use digital tools to engage with the market, to engage with our customers, to engage with other people, partners we do business with. It shouldn't be too much of a challenge if we just kind of try to transition in the way we use these digital tools in our everyday lives and then transition that into how we use them to be productive and then to just continuously learn and adapt until we have the level of adjustment that it takes to re-win the market. But probably the most important point is to build in resilience. It may take a while, and ultimately I believe that the new experiences that people are being introduced to as a response to this crisis will lead to some permanent changes in behavior, in the way people deal with businesses, with other organizations, church included, and also in the way we interact with each other. So it's not likely going to be simply like the switch back from a rainy season that causes some flood and disruption back to a dry season. There will be some permanent shifts, and I think we need to plan and innovate some permanent adjustments to re-win in a new context, which in many cases will be in the adoption and the application of technology and how we do business, how we engage, how we transact, and ultimately how we win.
Mr. Daz, before I let you go, one final question. In these times, again, I will ask that, should I look out to that external support from government? Or listen, you need to plan your plan before thinking about any stimulus package from government, because other countries, all of them are looking up to government. Finally, before I let you go on that one.
Right. Well, I don't think there is anything fundamentally wrong with hoping or even expecting some input from government in assisting the kind of adjustments we will do. And I believe there will be some input from government. But whatever input it is, and even in the advanced countries we're referring to, that input from government will not be enough to make the kind of adjustment and adaptation, both individually and as businesses, that we will need to re-emerge. There is only so much that in the size of change, the nature of shift in behavior and in engagement, there's only so much that government intervention can achieve. It's going to take a whole lot more innovation at the personal and at the business level to regain a strong position and win.
Mr. Dadzi, I thank you so much for your time, and we came to your home this evening. Interesting thoughts there, and have a good evening.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Mr. Humphrey Dake, he's Chief Executive, Red Moon Resources, actually, into the mines, energy, delivery, and everything that you can think about. You're also the Vice President of AGI, in charge of SMEs. What are your members in that space telling you?
Well, the members are also looking into the events unfolding and then adapting, as said by Mr. Dazi. And the one question one needs to ask himself, the said interruption, will one say that it's changing the framework and the scope of doing business, i.e. behaviorally, secondly, structurally. Granted that it's behaviorally, you ask yourself, what are the opportunities in the said behavioral change? Today, sanitizers have become a way of life.
It's a Big business.
And it's an opportunity.
I was telling you that I got one at a shop. It's supposed to be 4 Ghana cedis,
Right.
50 pesos. It sold to me at 27 Ghana cedis.
Well, that's about 500% increment in the
And I have
cost.
no choice.
Right. So that becomes a behavioral issue. But the other fundamental issue regarding that behavioral issue is how consistent can we keep this to sustain the newly developed industrial market. So a number of people are rushing into the sanitizing market, industry producing, importing. We need to figure out a culture of maintaining that behavioral change. And then it becomes a new growth pool for promoters of businesses, both SMEs and other enterprises to take. You could see that even in the US, by virtue of their Defense Act, a number of conglomerates are now moving to PPEs and desiring to produce that as a new non-core line of business.
All the fashion labels are moving into it.
And they're moving into it.
I was surprised
the car industry is
myself.
also moving into it.
Ventilators.
Thank you. So these are opportunities. Structurally, it has changed a number of activities. How can we maintain this to be consistent to develop an industry? These are our opportunities. If we intend to just sit back and analyze and cry over the severely impacted industry, the moderate and the mild, others are taking advantage. And currently, a number of documentaries are running around how China is taking advantage of the new growth poles out of the structural and the change and the interruption that is coming.
Mr. Dake, we've talked about the opportunities in America, UK, and all the rest, but some would say that these are structured economies. These are economies that you can see some indicators and predict. But can the same be said for a Ghana situation where one thing can happen tomorrow and everything changes?
That's right.
An investor outside that invests in our bonds decides to do a block trade and our cities start tumbling. Can we use that same module in terms of extending, it will be coming to the stimulus package as a way to go, or there has to be a Ghana situation in helping SMEs and in helping businesses like you?
Definitely, there's no one fit
actually
jacket that goes wrong because of the structured nature of the Western market. In our side, there's a lot of informality, and the SMEs, a section of the SME falls within that heavy bracket of informality. And therefore, interventions into such sectors need to be tailored to what exists within a particular jurisdiction. So therefore, I say you might not necessarily have the same model in the US or in Germany being implemented in Ghana. Nonetheless, still an opportunity, and a promoter of a business, either in the US or in Africa, still has the same traits of entrepreneurship. What one needs to do is to focus, scan the environment, look at the SWOT analysis, look at your available funds that you can easily deploy into the new areas, the new growth poles that you could leverage on and get a niche market and start developing and start investing. So it might not necessarily be same strategy in the US, but I believe that of Ghana can be unique and is doable in
Mr. Dake, I'll come to how significant will be a stimulus package for businesses. I mean, AGI, SMEs, in trying to turn things around. And I'll still cite the restaurant and the pub business as an example because I'm maybe exposed to them. That I have places that I used to go after work, weekends, that, listen, they are calling me, George, we want to deliver the food to you at the office. And I'm telling you, the amount of money I've spent this week on just that food.
Deliveries,
I'm saying that that is a typical example of a business that is still trying its best to stay alive. I mean, how are you sensitizing your members and all the rest to tell them that in the midst of, we have fashion labels that are going to Louis Vuitton, we have alcoholic beverage, Casa Preco. I just switched. And he was doing this. And if you look at the bottles, a friend of mine was telling me, George, these are bottles that was developed for something else.
That's right.
But quickly they've turned things around and they are staying alive. There are some hotels who have said that, listen, we are not getting clients. Government, we are prepared to give it to you to hold foreigners in here.
That's right.
They're making some money. Is that the way to go?
It's innovation. And I think Mr. Dusty mentioned it, how one adapts to the interruption. And then there and there, one becomes innovative. And until recent, Alibaba was doing a lot of deliveries, and as one of its big market, we know that of the U.S. market, doing a lot of deliveries. Ghanaian started doing an online buying, was the order of the day until this interruption. If this goes the same way, it deepens the delivery, the online purchases, it becomes a new style of living and becomes part of more of IT and is data driven. So that becomes an advantage to the telecommunication companies. How do we leverage on that? This has brought about a lot of structural change in the way we're going to do business going forward. What are the advantages to an economy like that? The reach to the gentleman or the food joint you mentioned, it's wider. How would he deploy?
They came to me, they called.
Yeah, and then they're all over the place. And the delivery, what do you call them? Motors.
Couriers or whatever.
So then what do you do with the courier services? How do you formalize it? Rope them in, regulate them. It becomes a new industry.
I'll be coming back to you about a stimulus package.
Okay, great.
What form should it be? First, you as a business person, and also second, as AGI and SMEs.
Okay.
But let me talk to employers. I mean, they are actually mulling some, what do you call it, rationalization, layoffs, and all the rest. And I have with me the Chief Executive of the Ghana Employers Association, Alex Frimpong. Mr. Frimpong, thank you for joining us on the business edition of PM Express as we look at how to stay alive in all these challenges. Thank you so much. And are you still planning or exploring the option of allowing people to go home because you can't stand the pressure?
Well, thank you for having me. I think that the last decision that businesses may want to take in this crisis is to lay off. Currently, we are in discussion with government on so many options that are likely to cushion the impact of the COVID-19 on businesses. So we are hopeful and more encouraged that these measures will yield results and support businesses so that the issue of any likely layoff would be something that may not come to fruition.
Mr. Frimpong, do I get from you that it's more of a but and ifs, that if these stimulus package comes in on time and is able to cushion your members, I, Aboagye-Wiafe, will still have my job?
Well, I think that we have suggested series of recommendations to government on how businesses can overcome these financial challenges. One, looking at how an emergency response fund can be created to support businesses. And that will really be looking at how employers can take care of the workers' salaries during this period, how they can procure raw materials that is needed badly for the running of their business, and also as part of their working capital. This goes to the heart of the issues for employers. So we understand His Excellency the President has announced the setting up of a fund to take care of these things. So in the coming days and weeks, we'll be engaging the relevant ministries, departments, and agencies on how employers can access these funds so that they can respond positively to run their businesses, and the question of layoffs may be the last option in the unlikely event that these measures do not really work in their favor.
Mr. Frimpong, I mean, let me just be a little bit, play the devil's advocate here. I mean, Mr. Frimpong operates a multinational, a big firm. It's a private firm. They pay their taxes. They're doing well. Why do you want government to come in and help you?
Well, the macroeconomic environment is a framework that government actually is the main manager. And given the pandemic and its global nature, definitely we know that government has a bigger say in all these things. And in all these things, we acknowledge that we have to work with government to make the environment right so that businesses can thrive and grow. So you realize that government the world over are helping businesses to be sustainable, because without businesses, governments cannot run, because governments run primarily on the taxes that are paid by these corporate bodies. Again, the social responsibility of businesses cannot be overemphasized. So we need to work with government, especially getting stimulus packages that can help businesses to thrive and grow. So we are not saying the government will do that all alone. We may have to partner government to make sure that we get things right at this critical time.
Mr. Frimpong, again, let me ask you, how are your members managing this time? I mean, there are some that are operating with the skeletal staff. I mean, the revenues are not coming in, you know. How are your members managing?
Well, we have different members operating across various sectors. And currently, we notice that those of our members in the tourism, hospitality, hotel industries are the hardest hit. Again, if you scale back, restaurants and those who supply them with their products are also being hit hard. So for those of them, many of them are almost on the verge of closure, or if they have not closed already. So the longer the pandemic continues, the more difficult it is for these businesses. And if the fund that we are proposing does not really go to their aid, likely layoffs would arise. Then you have other businesses that are operating on a low scale. For instance, those in the manufacturing sector. Because of social distancing, I'm aware that many of them typically operating on the factory production lines have reduced the number of staff in the hope that they will be able to comply with the social distancing protocols. In this case, the normal production will be affected, revenue will go down, even when they have done so. Because of the restriction of movements of the population, sales and marketing have also reduced. So these are very trying times that businesses are really in need of funding to support them temporarily. We have also indicated that if possible, government should consider deferring payment of tax, VAT, and income tax for a limited period of time, all in the hope that businesses will get some economic-like support so that they will be able to reduce the impact of the pandemic.
Mr. Alex Frimpong, finally, I was speaking to an HR consultant today, and he said that, George, the reality is that, listen, most firms, big firms, will struggle to deal or handle April salary and May salary. Is that a situation on the ground, or is that something we should brace ourselves for? Some other markets in Kenya, I remember a CEO said that he's working out some pay cuts for his staff. Is that a situation on the ground? We should brace ourselves for it.
Well, as I said, we concede that we are likely going to have some of these challenges. That is why, in our recommendation to government, we have indicated that the emergency fund should be able to support business to take care of workers' salaries in the interim, procurement of raw materials, and also working capital. So definitely we have challenges ahead of us. Already we have been in discussions with some of the businesses who are saying that for the month of April, they can do maybe 50% of salaries. Wow. If the situation continues in May, they can do another 50%. And if the situation also linger on, then payment of workers' salaries is going to be very, very difficult. So we should all prepare our minds and look at how we can all work together to overcome this challenge, especially trying to achieve the halting of this spread by supporting all the measures that the government and the Ministry of Health are trying to put in place. If the situation continues as it is, we are really going to have some difficulties on our hands.
Mr. Frimpong, he is the chief executive of the Ghana Employers Association. I was excited when I called you, but I don't think that we are ending on a good note in terms of taking a pay cut. We'll take a quick commercial break. And when we come back, Mr. Yimdake is in our studio. I know he is a chief executive. If I'm his worker, am I going to be assured of my salary and everything? Well, that's political talk, as real talk. We'll get back. We'll take a break. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the business edition of PM Express. And today we're talking about how do businesses out there, industries, survive in this partial lockdown or restricted movement. And even looking at the externalities, as they will say in economics, how it's impacting on them. Firms that actually play local, but they do business global. I have with me Mr. Yimdake, he's MD of Redmond Resources and also the Vice President of AGI in charge of SMEs. And welcome back from the break. So Dake, I don't think you'll run away from that question. You are a chief executive of a huge firm. Am I assured of my April, May salaries?
Oh yes, I believe, speaking from my perspective, at least our workers will tell you that they are assured of the March salary which we've paid and that of the next second quarter we determined to pay. The concern is, I did state that the impact of the virus on the segment of the market should be looked at in three veins: mild, moderate, and severe. If you use the severe and then generalize it, the whole market will panic. The initial disruption or interruption that came in, the entire market panicked. And then immediately, as a promoter of a business, being astute on the development of what is happening on the international market, you need to adapt, adjust, innovate. Once you do that and you do your focus, and I quickly went back to my projections for the 2020, and I called my team. Look at each revenue streams. Can you guarantee X? Do you need to do some assumptions and cut by 50%? When you do, what are the final bottom line? Can we survive? If not, there might be a gap. You might need to go speak to your bank and say, by virtue of this interruption, I need an injection. Considering that the year goes on, this market will change. Because if I've been in my space for 20 years, I know how it behaves over the period. So you need to scan the environment, deploy all your management tools, and do forecasting. See the extent of the impact on your sector. If it is severe, that you will need government stimulus package to assist you reshape. That is where I believe. And as I speak to my team of executives, including the president of AGI, I said, look, we need to identify the hardly hit sectors. And then we look at that value chain of that sector. Example, the airline. What happens to the ticketing businesses?
The local businesses, yeah.
So they look into the chain and the labor. What can be done to alleviate this impact on such a sector? When I go into the beverage industry like Asapreko and other related one, the impact there is rather an opportunity. And he's determined to make some significant revenue out of that stream. So to such a sector, analyze the value chain. How do we assist them to grow rather as an opportunity into after? There's a new market in Africa. You see, as we go on, bear in mind, other jurisdictions are preparing to take over the African markets.
Mr. Deke, let me come back to you still on the stimulus package.
Okay.
That, when I spoke to Alex Frimpong,
That's right.
It looks like employers are banking a lot of hopes. When it comes to AGI, what has been the discussion between AGI and government on the stimulus package that they are looking forward to?
Great. So we're engaging government on the stimulus package, and our recommendation and the paper we're presenting to government is, I've stated, segment the market, analyze where the impact is heavy, and then design an intervention and design the way of disbursement into such sectors, and ask these sectors, what can I hold you as a benchmark against this maybe in the fourth quarter? Would you say that by the fourth quarter when you revive, I will see X amount of taxes, I'll see X amount of employment, or as a form of intervention and the reward that comes back to it? We engage in government. If you do not segment the market and you lump everything to suggest that the impact is distorting every market, which is not the case, you might get it wrong. So we need to segment it, and ask government to look at the hardly hit industry and the moderate one and design an intervention to assist them resuscitate.
So, okay, I was just thinking, I was just hoping that by now there have been 10 meetings already. We've finalized, we've taken the document, we are bringing in the money, the mode of disbursement, then still talking. And because if you look at, and sorry, Mr. Frimpong is not here, but if you hear his comments, it looks like, listen, it's supposed to be the lifeline for them.
It is.
I was expecting that, listen, George, we have closed discussions. We are expecting the monies to be channeled to the banks. We go and access it.
No, but I mean, these are processes. Let's agree with it. And in the first quarter, when we all had this issue, I believe there was an intervention by the Ministry of Finance engaging the Bank of Ghana to reduce
lending rate
and bring some intervention.
To them.
Those were assuring, but the extent and the rate at which the commercial banks deploy that intervention, it's another matter that businesses and the banks keep engaging. And as stated by the president, it's going to be case-by-case basis. That is the first intervention. Then the second intervention comes a stimulus package. But man, the stimulus package cannot cover every entity. So therefore, some will take advantage of the BOG recommendation, some will take advantage of the stimulus package. There'll be a mixed basket. So, and as we engage government in this vein, these are huge issues that you need to, it's not a couple of days that you can resolve this, because there are other implications, considering what is happening on the energy front and the, what you call, crude prices are dropping. That is another kettle of fish that government needs to handle whilst we look at this. So we are engaging government. There are other recommendations that would government be willing to do deferred taxes regarding the VAT. But man, as we engage on this, that becomes another constraint on government. Nonetheless, we think those are areas that can be soft on businesses, because if I know I need to do my returns on the 15th of the month and pay VAT by the end of the month, and the cash flow by virtue of this interruption is distorting my cash flow, granted that I can start deferment, it's excellent. Part of it is that even if you delay, there are penalties to be paid on the VAT delayed, PAYE delayed. So those interventions, we're requesting government that take the penalties off, possibly defer this to June. In the US currently, the tax returns that is being moved from April to June. So it brings flexibility in the cash flow.
Do I get from you, because there are some who are saying that, George, and I've been engaging some CEOs.
That's right.
I don't need the cash. Rather, those government actions that take away money from my table, waive them, and let me get that space. You're talking about electricity bills, you're talking about taxes. Take those things also.
Electricity bills are a bit tricky because that's what is sustaining us.
But again, if you're giving me a stimulus package,
that's right.
I take those things that takes food on my table.
So that's why we're asking for VAT deferment, PAYE deferment. Some are even calling for SNID deferment. And the penalties for non-complying by the due date are harsh. Can we ask government to be a bit soft there whilst we work on the stimulus package and other related ones? We are not saying write it off, defer, reschedule, and then once the market dynamics change, we get back to the table.
Mr. Daka, I know for you businesses, you forecast, you plan, you do all those things. From the scenarios on your table, do you see this ending soon?
Well, considering what China has done in the last 3 months, today the report says that China is recovering. By the middle of the month, when we see the curve, the way it behaves, we could project. But we're confident by the third quarter, all things being equal, we trust God that events will turn and that we'll have a better season towards the fourth quarter.
Some big businesses have not been able to stand even 3 weeks. You're talking about third quarter.
Oh, yes. Because, look. China
things are going to get worse because we've not hit our peak yet.
That's a projection by the experts.
204 or whatever.
Yes. Which we believe by the middle of this month, April, 15th, 16th, we should see how the curve behaves. And then from there, you could do your projection. If it's so, if it worsens, then that suggests that it will go beyond the third quarter. If it does, recovery, stabilization, and once the market is distorted, we need a period for stabilization, recovery, stabilization before growth takes place.
Let's look into the crystal ball and let's do the scenarios here.
All right.
For you, what should we condition our mind? Because some would say in financial markets, when you price or forecast a disaster, you work towards it, you absorb it. For you, what period are you looking at here that things could get, that by this time, all other things being equal, things should stabilize a little bit?
I'm optimistic that by the early aspect of the fourth quarter, we should start seeing recovery. Growth will enter 2021 because you need a period of recovery, stabilization before it picks up again, hopefully in 2021. So end of third quarter, early fourth quarter, we should see a recovery of businesses. By virtue of that, we believe the banks will heed to the instructions of the BOG. All the engagement case-by-case negotiation will take place. The intervention will allow the banks to have enough surpluses to lend. And all this, and the process of lending and restructuring could take a whole 3 months. So that takes away the second and part of the third quarter. So by the time a number of institutions will get their contracts signed on financing interventions, including stimulus package, second, third quarter might be thereabout. So by the end of third quarter, early fourth quarter, we trust God for recovery.
So Daki, I'm so excited about your optimism because you lead an association and I believe that it will trickle down. For those small businesses that are not that optimistic, what advice do you have for them? For those who think that, listen, let me shut my business and go and sleep somewhere because I cannot manage this pressure. What advice do you have for these small businesses who are already giving up? It's
challenging because I had a friend who told me the husband's restaurant by the beach around Sakumana, he said that he's closing it down. And I said, why should he close it down? And it's cut down staff, maintain 2 to 3 month staff. I know there are some fixed costs that will come all the same, but we believe that shutting down totally, if you're in a factory, to re-crank the machines and get all the workers back and psych them again to get onto production takes some time. So if you can cut down and maintain a minimum staff that will balance your fixed cost, do that. If you can't, that it's negative, then you have no choice, and that falls into a category of severely hit. If you are mild, if you are moderate, you need to develop survival tactics. If you are severely hit, I'm sorry, that you need to go look for government stimulus package or start engaging your bankers to see what you could, what sort of intervention could come. So the categories are stated, so they are. So when you're an SME and you also fall within the same category, mild, moderate, severe, adopt same strategy. See what you can hold on to and keep hope alive.
I'm excited about keeping hope alive, and we'll try to keep hope alive in all these challenging times. Amen. Again, you raised a question about the Bank of Ghana measures, and for you, what is the talk with them in terms of the transmission mechanism? Some say that we are giving a 6 months moratorium, loan payment, we are cutting down. What has been the practice, and do you think that BOG should still come in? They issued a directive warning these banks that these monies are for the SMEs and businesses. Don't go and buy T-bills from government. I mean, what is the situation on the ground?
That's challenging. I got to be honest with you, because granted that government is being hit with its revenue basket, definitely the appetite of government will still go up, considering also that we're in an election year. You cannot write away the intentions of government to do what is needful to stay in power. And therefore, the directive of BOG and it not being adhered by the commercial banks, sometimes from AGI position, we keep saying that the anti-competition bill that has not been passed is a concern. It makes pricing going through the roof, and anybody does anything. That is why you walk to the market and the, what do you call that product? The
sanitizer from 4 cities to 27 Ghana.
There's no real regulation regarding pricing. And it's a challenge. The bank sometimes behave as an oligopolistic market, whereby they determine what to take and what not to take, because of the demand on cash and the demand from government on same cash with the various bonds and T-bills. It's a complicated, challenging issue, because you could see the reforms of BOG regarding the financial industry. How long has it taken us to really actualize the gains? It's a challenge. It's dragging. And the banks will keep giving all the nice excuses of cost of capital, the non-performing loans. Now, I mean, reports are coming out that non-performing loans are reducing. But how come the banks are not lending? And they give you all the excuses because the appetite of government is still high. That is a challenging issue that we need to interrogate. How come the directive of BOG and its impact on the commercial banks.
Do I get from you that you're still yet to feel the impact? I mean, it might be early days here, but by now, if I'm your bank, I should be writing to you, listen, I'm giving you this, I'm giving you that. I mean, it's not happening.
The banks will write to you. I mean, this is still a demand and supply engagement. And where the demand for government is still high, the appetite of government.
You are a high network client, obviously.
Irrespective
you won't
of that,
struggle in getting a loan.
Gentlemen, go by the statistics and see what is going to SMEs and going to the big players. And I mean, statistics will tell you. It's not a matter of just being a high network person. Beyond myself, I need to think about the value chain. He who buys from me, if he hasn't got disposable income and the cash flow on his enterprises is stressful, it will affect me in terms of how much goods I offload. So it's it's one big basket that we need to gradually shape and bring in some the anti-competition policy and other related regulatory issues that will aid and support the entire market.
The final word and all these things, I see that optimism and
we trust God. We trust God. We're still men of faith, and we believe that this is for a season. There are opportunities in it. They that have available disposable incomes as a result of savings, look out for the opportunities in this and grow new sectors. The African market now is wide for us. We need to take advantage of it before other jurisdictions pick it up and populate the market with their product. Cost cutting is one of the interventions one needs to do. Scan your environment for the opportunities. Segment the market. The PPEs are a unique market.
Yeah.
Segment it. Define your market and then deploy your resources. Take advantage, but as you do, see the behavioral change. See whether it can be consistent. So it determines how much you invest. What is happening also brings a new dimension to the stock market and the various shares in the stock market. It's an opportunity for they that have enough funds to grab a few shares that will be dropping by now, and then you could possibly be the owner of a new big company.
We're always told that you go into the market when the prices are indeed low as well. So that's an advice from the chairman of Red Moon Resources, Mr. Yim Dake. He's also the vice president of Association of Ghana Industries, AGI. He's ending for us on that optimistic note. And in these times, again, you just have to be an optimist to stay in business. This has been the business edition of PM Express, and as I wrap up, again, I want to personally, and I know my guests, to celebrate those frontline health personnel out there that are doing a great job to save our lives in the midst of all these challenges. You know, we have to keep hope alive. Enjoy your day.